For as long as I can remember, I've been the family's fixer, the one who pays the bills, arranges the celebrations, smooths over the conflicts no one else wants to touch. Invisible, yet indispensable. Last weekend, at the graduation ceremony for my teaching degree, and my 30th birthday quietly tucked in between, I was just background noise. The room buzzed with excitement for my younger brother Mark's shiny new promotion. Everyone was smiling, laughing, yet no one even glanced my way. I had quietly covered the entire event's expenses, $3,500 for the venue, catering, and decorations, because no one else would. Even Zoe, my sister-in-law, was there, all smiles with her designer dress and perfectly manicured nails. But beneath that charm was a sharpness in her eyes, a barely concealed sneer when she caught sight of my modest outfit. Her words were light but cutting. "Lauren, always so practical. I don't know how you manage without a wardrobe upgrade." The words stung, but I swallowed them down like I always do. There was always something off in these gatherings, a tension simmering beneath the surface that I tried to ignore. I've kept my head down, stayed responsible, carried the weight quietly. I have a secret power, a law degree I earned years ago. No one knows, not even my family. I never used it because I believed family came first, that love should be enough. But that power simmers inside me, waiting for when I might finally need it. Zoe's presence feels like a shadow in every family event. Her sly digs and thinly veiled insults a constant reminder of my invisibility. And yet, I'm the one who keeps this family afloat, the one who pays the bills no one else will, who stays silent when the spotlight never shines my way. The laughter around the table masks the undercurrents of resentment I carry, but I'm used to being invisible. I just hope I'm not invisible to myself. I often flash back to moments that shaped this invisible role I play. One Christmas when I was 10, the family gathered around the tree, and I remember the sting of disappointment so clearly, it still hurts. I had asked for a simple toy, a small doll with a chipped dress that I'd seen at the store weeks before. My parents had nodded, and I waited with hopeful heart. When the gifts were unwrapped, Mark held in his hands a brand new gaming console, the latest one, gleaming, expensive, the envy of every kid on the block. I clutched my chipped doll, the one no one else wanted. My mother smiled warmly at Mark and said, "You're the golden child, Lauren. Just be practical." The words hit like a slap, embedding themselves deep in my bones. From then on, I learned to be practical, to be the scapegoat who took the blame, the one who sacrificed so others could shine. My father was almost always away on work abroad, a vague excuse that kept him distant and absent. I never questioned it, because questioning only made the coldness worse. Years later, Zoe entered the picture, and her arrival only intensified the imbalance. Her charm masked a parasitic streak that sucked the life from me and left me drained. The foundation of my family was built on favoritism and neglect, and I was the one who held the cracks together. Now, at 30, the sacrifices I've made are staggering when I finally allow myself to count them. Over the last decade, I've contributed over $150,000 to my family's needs. I paid off my parents' mortgage installments, $50,000 quietly wired to accounts no one thanked me for. I funded Mark's struggling startup business with $70,000, money I earned by working extra hours, skipping vacations, and cutting my own needs to support his dreams. I covered family emergencies that no one else even asked about, hospital bills, car repairs, even Zoe's extravagant tastes disguised as family contributions that no one else questioned. And yet, at every family dinner, Zoe mocked me, calling me the ATM, with a sneer that froze the room. Helen, my mother, dismissed me as too serious and praised Mark's carefree attitude, planting seeds of doubt about my worth. But I'm not alone in this. Ethan, my husband, is the only one who truly sees me. He's my rock, my confidant. When I break down in exhaustion, it's Ethan who reminds me I deserve respect and to stand up for myself. He listens when I confess my fears about escalating the conflict, when I reveal my legal expertise as a secret weapon I might one day wield. For now, I hesitate, still clinging to the hope that family means something more than just money and neglect. The first public humiliation was at Mark's 28th birthday party, the night everything shifted beneath my feet. The room was full of family and friends, laughter echoing off the walls as Mark stood proudly next to his brand new car. A toast began, praising his success, and then Zoe's voice cut through the cheer. Well, if Lauren had ambitions beyond teaching, maybe she'd afford a car like this, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. The room fell silent, eyes flicking toward me. My face burned, a flush of shame and hurt rising quickly, but I forced a smile. It was easier to rationalize it as jealousy than to face the raw truth, that my efforts and achievements were erased in an instant. Later, I pulled Zoe aside, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "I'm not just your family bank," I said quietly. She smirked, that same dismissive curl of her lips. "And you never will be," she replied with venom. That exchange planted a seed of doubt in me, one that would grow in the quiet hours when I was alone. Maybe I hadn't been invisible by accident. Maybe I'd been made invisible, on purpose. The hurt was sharp, but beneath it, something else stirred. A flicker of something I couldn't yet name. The moment I dared to push back, Zoe's counterattack was swift and merciless. It started subtly, a whispered comment here, a pointed look there, before exploding into a full-blown campaign of gaslighting and rumor-mongering. At the next family gathering, I overheard Helen, my mother, speaking in hushed tones to distant cousins, accusing me of being selfish and controlling with money. The words hit like icy darts, especially coming from her. Helen had always been the matriarch who chose favorites, and now it was clear she was rallying to Zoe's side, painting me as the villain disrupting family harmony. I felt my chest tighten as I realized the isolation creeping in, a tightening no one else seemed to notice or care about. Zoe's tactics were cruelly effective. She twisted every attempt I made to set boundaries into evidence of me destroying family unity. During one particularly tense family meeting, Zoe's voice dripped with false concern as she accused me of playing the victim and holding grudges that poisoned every conversation. I tried to speak, to explain how my financial contributions and sacrifices had been taken for granted, but every word I uttered was met with cold dismissal or sneering disbelief. Helen chimed in, echoing Zoe's accusations, her gaze sharp and dismissive, as if my feelings were nothing but inconvenient noise. I felt the walls closing in, the flying monkeys, relatives and in-laws alike, circling, their doubts and questions aimed squarely at me. Despite the backlash, I refused to back down completely. I reminded myself of the quiet strength that had carried me this far, the resilience honed through years of being overlooked and underestimated. Yet, the psychological warfare was exhausting. The dinners that once felt like home now felt like battlefields where every word was a weapon. I would catch Ethan's eyes across the room, his silent support a lifeline amid the chaos. But inside, a storm brewed. Frustration, hurt, and a flicker of something darker that whispered I could no longer be invisible or silent. The corner I found myself in was tight, but I was far from defeated. I just needed to find the right way to fight back. Determined to break the cycle, I took a deep breath and decided to call a family meeting, hoping for a peaceful resolution. I invited Helen, Mark, and Zoe, with Ethan acting as mediator to keep the conversation grounded. I prepared carefully, bringing documented records of every dollar I had contributed and every favor I'd quietly done. I spoke calmly, my voice steady as I laid out the truth they refused to see, the financial load I carried, the emotional labor that went unnoticed, and the fairness I sought. I wasn't asking for praise, just acknowledgement and respect. I hoped that laying everything bare would finally open their eyes to the imbalance, but Zoe was ready. She cloaked her venom behind a mask of concern, accusing me of keeping score and being too cold for family warmth. Her words were designed to make me doubt myself, and Helen was quick to join in, dismissing my concerns as overreacting and making mountains out of molehills. Mark stayed silent, his passivity a quiet endorsement of their chorus. Ethan tried to steer the conversation back to reason, but his neutrality was no match for their combined force. The meeting ended with no resolution, no acknowledgement, only a deeper chasm between us. I left feeling hollow, more alienated than ever, questioning if peace was even possible when the people I loved seemed determined to misunderstand and dismiss me. The next public humiliation came at a family milestone, Helen's 60th birthday celebration. I had hoped, foolishly perhaps, for a moment of recognition. Instead, the night turned into a nightmare. My recent teaching award, a symbol of years of hard work and dedication, was completely ignored. The spotlight was stolen by Zoe in a calculated move. She publicly accused me of a financial mistake related to a family investment I'd managed. Her voice was sharp and loud, ensuring every guest, even family friends, heard her smear. She claimed I had wasted money and was responsible for a $5,000 penalty now charged to my name by the family accountant. The accusation was a lie. There was no such error, but Zoe's performance painted me as reckless and incompetent. I felt heat rise to my cheeks, shame dragging me down in front of everyone. The damage was immediate, financial and reputational. My heart clenched as I saw the whispers and exchanged glances, the silent judgments that would linger long after the party ended. That night, lying awake, the weight of Zoe's cruelty pressed down on me. I thought about every sacrifice I'd made, every quiet effort to keep this family afloat, and how it had been repaid with humiliation and betrayal. Reality settled harshly. This wasn't just thoughtless meanness. It was a deliberate campaign to undermine me. The truth was stark. Zoe's cruelty was escalating, and my suffering was no accident. Yet within that pain, a flicker of clarity emerged. I wouldn't let this break me. I had to find a way through, even if it meant standing alone. In a last, desperate attempt to salvage what little remained of trust, I sought Zoe out privately. The house was quiet, save for the distant hum of the city outside. I spoke candidly, laying everything on the table. "I want fairness, not control," I said, my voice steady but soft. I proposed transparent accounting, collaboration, and a fresh start. No more secrets, no more silent sacrifices. I wanted to rebuild, to find common ground. For a moment, I thought she might surprise me, but her eyes hardened, and she shook her head with a cold, dismissive sneer. "I have better things to do than placate a bitter sister-in-law," she said, her words cutting deeper than any insult before. That rejection hit me like a blow. The finality in her tone was unmistakable. A line crossed, a door slammed shut. I saw clearly then that Zoe's parasitic behavior was not a phase or a misunderstanding. It was entrenched, unrepentant, and deliberately cruel. The hope I clung to shattered in an instant, leaving me with a stark truth. If I wanted respect, justice, and peace, I would have to claim them on my own terms. The fight ahead was no longer about reconciliation. It was about survival and reclaiming my dignity from the woman who sought to erase me. The days after that last failed family meeting felt like I was slipping through quicksand, each step dragging me deeper into isolation. Mark, who used to be my brother, my confidant, now barely returned my calls. I caught glimpses of him at family gatherings, his eyes avoiding mine as if I had suddenly become a stain on the family fabric. Zoe's poison had seeped into him, her whispers painting me as the troublemaker, the one tearing the family apart with my unreasonable demands. Helen, my mother, was no sanctuary either. Her sharp words cut deeper than any stranger's. "Lauren, you're stirring the pot again," she said coldly over the phone, her voice laced with disappointment that felt more like condemnation. She dismissed my appeals for fairness as childish complaints, as if my decades of sacrifice were nothing but background noise. Even distant cousins and old family friends, whom I'd considered casual allies, began to avoid me, casting wary glances that spoke volumes. I was suddenly the problem no one wanted to face. Alone in my small apartment, I wrestled with a growing self-doubt. Was I wrong to fight? Had I been selfish to demand that my years of generosity be acknowledged? My mind spiraled into questions about my worth. Was I just a collection of unpaid debts and unreciprocated favors? The crushing weight of rejection threatened to suffocate me. I replayed every moment when I had been overlooked, every birthday I'd funded, every crisis I'd quietly resolved. The silence that met my efforts was deafening. Despite Ethan's steady presence, the loneliness was a cold shadow. He held my hand one night, his voice calm but firm. "You're not alone, Lauren. I see you. I know what you've done." But even his words, though a lifeline, couldn't erase the hollow ache inside me. I felt like a ghost trapped in a family that refused to see me, a ghost fading into the background of their stories. The Thanksgiving dinner was supposed to be a moment of peace, a chance to reconnect, to share stories and gratitude. Instead, it became the stage for betrayal that cut so deep it shattered something inside me. As the turkey was passed and glasses raised, Zoe's voice sliced through the laughter with the venom of a viper. "Lauren," she called out, loud enough for the entire room to hear. "We need to talk about the family trust. Someone's been embezzling money, and it's time we named names." The room went silent, all eyes turning toward me as if I were suddenly a criminal. My heart pounded, disbelief mingling with shock. "What are you talking about?" I demanded, voice steady despite the storm inside. Zoe's smirk was a blade twisting in the wound. "You heard me. Show me the evidence, Zoe," I challenged, eyes locked on her. But she simply shook her head, her refusal an insult wrapped in cruelty. The guests exchanged uneasy looks, some shocked, some uncertain, others clearly buying into Zoe's poison. In that moment, the last vestige of my spirit cracked. I wanted to scream, to defend myself, but instead a cold clarity settled over me like ice. This wasn't just about money. This was about erasing me, about wiping away every sacrifice, every quiet act of love. I stood, voice low but resolute. No more. I left the dinner abruptly, the weight of betrayal settling heavy on my shoulders as I walked away, my mind ablaze with the need to fight back. In the silence of my apartment that night, the floodgates of memory opened. I sifted through years of sacrifices, every birthday party I'd paid for, every emergency loan I'd offered, every insult I'd swallowed without complaint. The pain was raw, but beneath it simmered a fierce, burning anger. How many times had I been invisible, overlooked, dismissed? How often had I been the safety net while others basked in the spotlight? The realization hit me with the force of a storm. I had been invisible, yes, but I was not powerless. I recalled my law degree, dusty certificates tucked away in a drawer, a weapon waiting to be drawn. This wasn't just about being heard anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity. I whispered to the dark, "Never again." The weight of years of abuse transformed into a fire that burned away my doubts and fears. For the first time in a long time, I felt the stirrings of resolve, a promise to myself that I would no longer be the family doormat, the silent victim. I was awakening, and nothing would be the same. The next morning, with my resolve hardening into a plan, I sought out Ethan. His steady presence was a balm to my frayed nerves. "I'm done being invisible," I told him, voice firm but tinged with vulnerability. I laid out my thoughts, how I would use every ounce of legal knowledge I had to reclaim control, to expose the truth, and to protect myself. "We start by reviewing every contract, every will, every financial document," I said, determination sharpening my words. Ethan nodded, a quiet strength in his eyes. "I'm with you, Lauren. It's time they see you for who you really are." Together, we began to map out a strategy, discussing how to gather evidence, document every abuse, and prepare for the battle ahead. As we spoke, I felt a shift inside me. My posture straightened, my voice grew steadier, and a cold clarity settled over my thoughts. The path ahead was daunting, but for the first time I wasn't walking it alone. The stage was set, not just for retaliation, but for justice, and I was ready. I started by gathering everything: credit card statements, bank records, lease agreements, emails, anything that touched on the tangled web of our family's finances. The more I sifted through, the clearer it became how deeply intertwined my resources were with their needs. Zoe's expenses, so often dismissed as minor or incidental, were actually draining me dry. Her name never appeared on bills or leases, but my credit cards were the silent payers behind fancy dinners, designer clothes, and even her emergency vet visits for that pampered poodle. It wasn't just generosity anymore. It was exploitation, dressed in charm. Mark's business lease was another shock. A long-term commitment under my name, signed years ago when he needed help. I hadn't even realized how much liability I'd taken on for him, a silent guarantor in a venture he barely acknowledged. It hit me hard that my safety net was a noose tightening around me. Determined to understand my position, I reached out to a family law attorney, a calm, pragmatic woman who listened without judgment. When I laid out the documents, her brow furrowed thoughtfully. "Lauren, you have more leverage here than you realize," she said quietly. She pointed out clauses buried in my parents' old wills and contracts, unfiled and forgotten, that could shift power in my favor if others neglected their duties. It was as though years of invisible sacrifice had left footprints I could now follow. The legal footholds I'd never thought to use were there, waiting like dormant seeds beneath the soil of family dysfunction. I felt a flicker of hope, a sense of possibility that this invisible work I'd done wasn't worthless after all. It was a map, a set of keys. I wasn't just a victim. I held cards they didn't know I was dealing. Yet the weight of this knowledge was heavy. These vulnerabilities I uncovered weren't just tools. They were proof of how much I'd carried alone. The emotional ache of realizing how deeply I'd been used mingled with a cold, steely resolve. I wasn't naive anymore. This was a game, and I had to learn its rules fast. My mind raced through conversations, the subtle looks, the dismissive tones, all pieces of a puzzle I was now determined to solve. The family's dependence on me was no accident. It was an unspoken truth hidden beneath layers of denial and manipulation. Zoe thrived because I had enabled her, unknowingly or not. But now, armed with facts and law, I was ready to redraw the lines. I could see the battleground clearly, and I was preparing to enter it on my own terms. Even as I mapped vulnerabilities, I reminded myself to keep calm, to maintain the facade of the reliable, kind sister. No one could suspect I was quietly unraveling the threads they'd woven around me. I rehearsed small smiles, practiced neutral tones at family dinners, and nodded through Zoe's barbs with a grace that concealed the fury building beneath. Each interaction became a performance, a mask I wore while I fortified my defenses. I copied documents late into the night, secured passwords, and made sure every legal notice was discreetly filed away. My will was updated, no more leaving my assets vulnerable to their whims. When I spoke with the attorney again, we discussed confidential notifications about potential fraud, a quiet alarm bell that would alert me if Zoe tried to shift money without oversight. These silent preparations were painstaking, meticulous. I was building a fortress brick by brick. The hardest part was holding all this inside. At family gatherings, I smiled through the jabs and dismissals, tasting the bitterness behind forced pleasantries. I caught Zoe's eyes once, her smile tight, as if she sensed a shift she couldn't see yet. Mark avoided me more than ever, his usual indifference now tinged with suspicion. Helen's cold glare was sharper, a silent warning that no one was on my side. Yet, I stayed composed, knowing that any crack in my armor would give them ammunition. Ethan's steady presence was my anchor, his quiet support the only place I could let down my guard. Together, we plotted each step carefully, aware that rushing would only betray my hand. The groundwork was laid. The first moves were mine to make when the time was right. Late one night, as I reviewed bank records one last time, I found it, an unmistakable pattern I hadn't seen before. Zoe's name wasn't on the accounts, but the withdrawals told a story. Small at first, then larger, repeated over years. Unauthorized charges siphoning off nearly $25,000 from my personal accounts. Each withdrawal was a stab in the back, the financial betrayal hidden beneath the surface of family smiles and polite conversation. The shock hit me like a physical blow. How had I missed this? How had Zoe been stealing from me all this time while everyone else looked the other way? The betrayal was deeper than I imagined, turning a private battle into something criminal. My mind reeled as I gathered proofs, screenshots, transaction histories, timestamps. The digital footprints she'd left were careless and raw, a treasure trove of evidence. This revelation ignited a fire inside me that no amount of pain could extinguish. It was no longer just about respect or fairness. It was about justice. I reached out to witnesses, bank managers, Friends who had overheard Zoe boasting carelessly about borrowing money without asking. Each piece of evidence added weight to my case, transforming vague suspicions into a concrete accusation. I felt a cold clarity settling over me, sharpening my resolve. Zoe's mask of charm shattered in my mind, replaced by the calculating thief she truly was. The urgency to act consumed me. I couldn't wait for another humiliation, another betrayal. The documents and proofs were ready. The next step was action. I drafted the first formal cease and desist letters with Ethan's help, my hands steady despite the storm inside. I revoked every financial authorization Zoe had, froze shared accounts where her name was absent but my credit was used, and legally cut her off from family properties tied to me. The silence that followed was electric. Zoe's first reaction was confusion. She noticed funds drying up, but couldn't immediately connect the dots. I watched from a distance as her carefully maintained control began to crack. Vendors who once accepted Zoe's word now demanded payment directly from her. Creditors called her out, and suddenly, the financial safety net she'd relied on fell away. She was unprepared, scrambling to patch holes in a sinking ship she didn't see coming. No one else suspected me yet. Zoe continued her performance of innocence, deflecting blame with practiced ease. Mark was still too passive to intervene, Helen oblivious or indifferent as always. Family gatherings remained tense, but unchanged on the surface. Yet beneath the calm, the first fractures appeared. I felt the power shift subtly, but undeniably. The game had begun, and I was no longer a silent pawn. I had made my first moves, and though the consequences were just starting to ripple, I could already see Zoe's empire beginning to crumble. Quietly, patiently, I was reclaiming my place, not as the invisible victim, but as the force they never expected. The day of the family mediation arrived with a tension so thick it felt like I could slice it with my bare hands. The room was neutral, sterile, too clinical for what was about to unfold. Seated around the polished table were faces I'd known all my life, faces that now felt like adversaries. Zoe sat opposite me, her usual poise replaced by something tighter, almost fragile. Mark shuffled papers nervously beside her, avoiding my gaze. Helen was perched at the edge of her chair, eyes darting between us like a hawk searching for weakness. Ethan was the only calm presence, his steady hand resting lightly near mine, a silent anchor in the storm. I took a deep breath and began. I've gathered every document, every record, every witness testimony to show the truth, I said, my voice steady but firm. One by one, I laid out the evidence. Bank statements with unauthorized withdrawals, emails where Zoe admitted to borrowing funds without permission, and even the lease for Mark's business signed under my name without my knowledge. The room buzzed with murmurs as the weight of the facts settled. Zoe's face paled, her carefully practiced charm slipping away like mist. When she finally tried to deny it, I simply held up the documents again, letting the silence speak louder than any argument. "This ends now," I said, eyes locking onto hers. "I am no longer your scapegoat or ATM." The power shift was undeniable. For the first time, I wasn't begging for recognition. I was demanding respect. The family's whispered shock swirled around me, but I stood tall, unshaken. Boundaries were drawn in ink and conviction. No more unpaid bailouts. No more silence. The champagne moment of my life wasn't bubbly or celebratory. It was the bitter taste of truth finally spilling into the open. The aftermath was immediate and brutal. Zoe's carefully constructed world began to unravel with a quiet ferocity I hadn't anticipated. Word spread quickly. Family whispers turned into questions, then accusations. Creditors who had once accepted her reassurances started calling with urgent demands. Mark's indifference shifted into panic, his casual detachment replaced by frantic phone calls and whispered meetings behind closed doors. I watched from a distance as Zoe's facade cracked, her attempts at damage control growing more desperate by the hour. Then came the messages, texts filled with apologies, promises of change, desperate pleas for understanding. One evening, her voice broke over the phone as she begged, "Lauren, please, can we just forget all this? I'll make it right." But I had built a new armor, one forged from years of betrayal and pain. "Trust is earned, not begged for," I replied coolly. the finality in my tone unmistakable. Her isolation became palpable. The family, once divided by her influence, began to see the cracks and question loyalties. The balance of power was shifting, and Zoe was losing ground with every passing day. But Zoe didn't surrender easily. When pleading failed, her tactics darkened. She rallied relatives and friends, those flying monkeys who'd once whispered in her favor, now sent to pressure me. Calls came at odd hours, thinly veiled threats wrapped in concern, veiled accusations masked as worry. One cousin, someone I'd trusted, showed up unannounced at my doorstep, eyes darting nervously as they urged me to think about the family. Emails arrived, heavy with emotional blackmail, reminding me of shared memories and the damage my actions might cause. Yet beneath the surface, I was no longer the pliable sister they'd exploited. I documented every interaction meticulously, turning their weapons back on them by reporting harassment when necessary. Each attempt at manipulation only tightened my resolve. Zoe's influence shrank as her schemes backfired, leaving her increasingly cut off. The isolation that once seemed a curse became her prison. The more she pushed, the more she fell into the silence she had once wielded as a weapon against me. In the quiet aftermath, I found a peace I hadn't known in years. Standing in my home, surrounded by Ethan and a small circle of those who truly saw me, I felt the weight of invisibility lift. The family estate, now legally secured with safeguards against future exploitation, was a symbol of all I had fought for, a fortress of dignity and respect. Helen's cold stares no longer pierced me. Mark's distant silence was powerless to wound. Zoe's fate was uncertain, a shadow fading from the family's heart. But I was no longer defined by their neglect or their cruelty. I was seen. I was respected. I was free. As the soft light filtered through the windows, I whispered to myself, for years I was invisible, exploited and silenced. Now I am whole. The journey had been brutal, but it forged a new beginning, one where boundaries were honored and worth was never questioned. The future stretched before me, not as a battleground, but as a promise, hopeful, strong, and mine to shape.